All right. Welcome to part 2 of Sales Script for Increasing Influence. I am so happy to have you here with us today. We are going to dig deep into language today. We are going to talk about specificity. It's only taken me 3 years to learn how to say that word properly. We'll see how many times I get it right and how many times I get it almost right today as we talk about it. But we're going to talk about specificity. I'm going to give you some language skills today that will make you a better communicator overall in all areas of your life, but particularly with your clients and prospects. That's the goal of today. There will be time to work. I'm going to say this one is probably more content heavy than what we did last week, but that's just to kind of get the content to you. And hopefully what you'll do is you will practice this week with these types of language strategies and techniques so that you can apply them and then come back and share how it worked for you in your client interactions. So before we jump in today, I would like to give you an opportunity, anybody who would like to share a win, something that you applied from last week's training around overcoming objections. Anybody have something they'd like to share, a win they'd like to share before we dive into actual content? No pressure. Hi, Kim. I see your face.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go.
Me?
Yeah.
Kim. Oh, okay. So I taught a class yesterday and I had a student that had a tech problem. They didn't find the email with the login and the password. And at the end of the class, as I'm checking the messages, I noticed that she had been missing. And she had said she was very unhappy and she wanted a refund. Now she has signed up for all of my classes. She's in my in-studio and all my virtual. And I thought, this is really unusual. For her, she's usually really kind of like mellow and just in a text to say, I'm really not happy and I'd like a refund for today. Yeah. Wow. So I utilized, I thought, what would Nikki say? And it was really lovely. I kept it super open and I didn't want to make her wrong. Yeah. And so I utilized, I said, I asked her if my email might have got routed to her spam filter. And I said, might I have the incorrect email address? So trying to use some of that softening. Mm-hmm. And then I said, when is a good time to call you? We'll get it straightened out. So not like if you would like a call, but that more definitive. Yep. She emailed back a few hours later, or a text message back saying she got the other emails. She'll check her spam. She found it in her spam folder. She goes, I don't know why I didn't think to look there. Sorry. I apologize for being a brat this morning.
Awesome. Good for you. That's a win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she never really reapproached wanting to have a call or needing a refund. So it was just, 4 text messages and it was handled.
Yeah. I love this as a win for you, Kim, and for everybody listening too, that when somebody comes at you like this, so instead of getting defensive, get curious, ask questions, see what happens as a result of that. And it's just always fun to see what will happen when people are like open to hearing, like checking in, and then they come back. Sometimes it's just like, maybe something else was going on in her life. She just needed a little bit of like calming experience without you saying like, calm down, right? Because that's like the worst thing. I'm just seeing an email here for somebody who's asking me for the password to get in. Oh, is it not in here? Kathy did not put it in the...
It wasn't in the reminder one, but I did.
It is supposed to be in the reminder. I just am looking, and now I'm like, I don't know if I know what the password is. Who has it?
825573.
Oh, you're the best. Hold on a second. Tell me again one more time.
Yeah. 82.
I just put it in the chat, Nikki.
Okay. I don't have my chat open yet either. I got it now. Thank you. Thank you, all of you. You saved me. I appreciate it. Okay. That's the last one I'm going to do. No, here's one more. Okay, one more. Okay. I am going to share my screen and we're going to go and we'll just, because once I share screen, I cannot see people's emails. Hold on just 1 second. Let me just, if you guys would indulge me for just 1 second, let me just leave a message for Kathy. I'm going to mute myself and leave her a quick Voxer. Where is she on my Voxer? There she is. Okay, we're all good now. Here we go. Let's share my screen. Go into presentation mode. All right, Michelle, can you see that? Will you give me a thumbs up? Yeah, okay, thank you so much. And here we go. We already talked about sharing a win. Here's what we're going to talk about today, specificity. I am super excited to roll out the meta model to you. We're going to talk about some of the communication issues that are caused in conversation and how to overcome those, how to ask questions in a way that's going to get you clarity, ways to get, I'm going to share clarity techniques. And then I do have some sample scripts that I've written up for you with the idea to get you started, get this stuff like front of mind and thinking about when you're communicating with clients and prospects, how to have more clarity in your communication and how to help your clients and prospects have more clarity in their communication so that you're able to deliver solutions that are a better fit for them. All right, would you please turn to page 14 in your workbook? I have more data in the workbook than I do on the screen, so I want to just talk through this a little bit. But the idea is to earn a prospect's business, we must first understand what their want, their need, their problem is, right? I hope you're saying like, duh, Nikki, I got that. And to support our clients in experiencing the change they want in their situation, their life, and their business, we need to uncover the obstacle stopping them from already having their desired outcome. I want to comment and just like reread that last part there. When you are working with somebody or trying to earn somebody's business, it is important to understand what's the obstacle stopping them from already having their desired outcome. Now, the premise behind my NLP training is that people have all the resources they need. They just need to have access to them. So NLP teaches that we all are capable of accomplishing anything and everything that we want in our lives. And when something is getting in our way, it's because there's some unidentified thing stopping us. So this is why people hire coaches. This is why people hire designers. This is why people go through courses and need somebody to help them with goal setting and need HR assistance and all the things that you do, because there is some blind spot that is blocking them from already having access to the resources that are available to them. I just spent an amazing couple of days with my own stylist who I have worked with for 4 years. She's actually on this call, Lisa Fisher. Hey girl, she's amazing. And Lisa, even though we've worked together for 4 years, taught me some new things just in the last 2 days that I was like, mind blown, right? But and I was saying to her before we started, like, I don't know if I can do this. And she's going, Nikki, you can do this, right? But I just need some guidance. I need somebody to guide me through the process to get to the place where I go like, oh, when she left yesterday, when I took her back to the airport, I was like, I can do this, right? This is how you help your clients. All right. So The key to unlocking the first step in both the above situations that I'm talking about here is learning to use language in a way that minimizes ambiguity, confusion, and miscommunication. This means learning the art of specificity. Communicating your message clearly and specifically makes it easier for your prospect to know what to do or expect when they work with you and or hire you. So using language to support your clients to be more specific in their communication, you're able to better tailor your solutions to meet their needs. I just realized I moved on to the next slide. So this is introducing the meta model to you today. This is a technique for getting to the heart of the matter. Now, the meta model was initially developed by John Grinder and Richard Bandler. They are the founders of NLP. And they developed it as a means of identifying and responding to problematic patterns in speech. This is where communication or miscommunication happens. Problematic patterns in speech. Those of you who've worked with me for a while, you know that one of my deep loves is language and how to say things clearly, how to make it easy for clients to move to the next step with you. This is why I teach the conversation side of sales. And the meta model is a big part of how you are going to get more proficient in your sales process, how you're going to get more proficient at having more influence in all of your conversations. So the meta model consists of a series of categories to identify various areas of verbal communication that are susceptible to considerable ambiguity and often lead to confusion and miscommunication. The identification of the meta model pattern and the application of the corresponding question can provide insight into the structure of thought and speech when applied to any type of problem solving. I find this to be super freeing. So we'll see how you feel at the end of these 2 hours together today. But the idea that you can get some insight into the structure of how somebody thinks and speaks so that it gives you clues on how to problem solve, to me feels like I love this stuff. Hopefully you're getting that already. So the model we make of the world, this is a very NLP term, like phrase here. The models we make of the world around us with our brains and our language are not the world itself, but a presentation of it. So there's a phrase. So I'm going to show you this picture. So if I asked you right now, is that Idaho? Some of you know I just moved to Idaho. Is that Idaho? Your brain might want to say, yes, Nikki, that's Idaho. That actually isn't Idaho. That's a map of Idaho. And I could show you, originally I had a bunch of different maps of Idaho that I had put on this slide. I could show you all these different maps. I could show you one where it talks about, where the rivers run, or I could show you one that talks about where what type of wildlife is here, and, what areas are heavily populated, what school districts are in Idaho. But is that Idaho? No, that's a map of Idaho. So the map is not the territory. And helping people understand, a lot of times in communication, we look at this and we go, oh, well, that's Idaho. We look at situations and go, oh, that's this or that's that. But oftentimes, that's not an accurate way to communicate. We do this in our own communication when we're marketing our products and services. We speak in these 3 problem areas. So now we're going to move to page 16 in the workbook. So there are 3 basic problem areas when communicating. The first one, we'll see if any of these relate to you, and we're going to dig into these a little bit today, is we generalize. Generalization is a process in which pieces of a person's model become detached from their original experience and come to represent the entire experience. Has anybody ever said to you, you always do this? And you think to yourself, I don't always do it. That's a generalization. Here's the second one, deletion, a process by which we selectively pay attention to a certain dimension of our experience and exclude others. Deletion is one of the things that gets people in trouble when they are in in a situation where they'll delete a certain amount of information. They'll say like, well, I get this with my nieces and nephew. Like they'll say, well, the teacher said this to me. Like the teacher was accusing me of blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay, but what was your part in this? Like, what did you say? What started this conversation? They delete information and just focus on one particular area. The third thing is distortion. This is a process which allows us to make shifts in our experience and pay more attention to some portion of the experience than to others. This gets people in trouble oftentimes when there is an accident or when they witness something, and you can go, how can we have 7 witnesses to something that happened and they each have a different version of the story? Who's telling the truth? Do you guys know this? Like, who's telling the truth? Well, in their minds, they're all telling the truth, but how can it be the truth if there's 7 versions? It's because we distort, we focus in a certain area. Maybe we miss this other stuff because we're so focused over here. Somebody who's a high visual might focus on, what were the colors? What did something happen? Somebody who's a high kinesthetic may talk about, this is how people felt in this situation, right? There's all these ways that we can distort information. So how do we overcome these 3 basic problems? The goal of the meta model is not to find the right answer. This can be hard for some of us who think in black and white, yes, no, right, wrong. And one of the things I love so much about neurolinguistic programming is because it teaches flexibility. So the idea is not to find the right answer, it's to learn how to ask better questions. You may have heard me say this before. When I am working with a client, I'm never attached to them taking my answer, and I'm never attached to them using my idea, because that's not the job as the coach. It's not for me to give them the right answer. It's for me to ask better questions. It's for me to offer solutions so that they can find the answer that fits for them. Okay? So, how do you get better at getting some clarification? You guys have probably all heard these before, seen these in many areas of your life. But if you turn to page 17, here are some of the things we've got to learn how to start asking for information around. Who specifically are you talking about? What specifically? Now, if you have worked with me, you know I use this word all the time, specifically. I'll use it in my email communication. I will use it when I feel like somebody is distorting information, deleting, or generalizing. I want to know who, what, when specifically. Or I'll say, what was one specific thing that stood out to you about this? That's where you start to get like really great information. Or where specifically, how specifically. And then the last one is why specifically. Now, I put why last for a reason, because you want to be careful of asking too much why of somebody in a particular situation. And here's why. When you ask why, it can do 2 things. It either brings up a lot of story. So when you ask somebody like, why do you think this way? Or why did this happen? They want to tell a story, and or it feels like blame comes out. Well, when I was 5, my mom said to me, blah, blah, blah. And ever since then, I've never been able to get over I don't know if you've ever had this in your situation. One of the things I really love and that I learned about in my studies of neurolinguistic programming is I don't actually need a lot of story in order to help people make change, in order to teach people selling skills, in order to help them get better at language. And because they know their story. I don't need to know their story. I just need to make sure they understand their story. And I need to ask better questions. So when you look at these, I want you to start to think, how can you offer some additional clarity in the way that you speak to your clients? And that could be in the way you write offers. That could be in the way you post information out on social media. That can also be the way you choose to answer questions. Are you digging down and getting to specifics? I don't know if you've ever worked with somebody, maybe you've had a coach in the past where you just feel like you get a lot of surface answer. And it's not that the person doesn't know their stuff necessarily, but they don't know how to get down to the heart of the matter. They don't know how to get down to asking better questions. They don't know how to get themselves to be more specific in their communication. And so you might walk away going, well, I could never do that now. And it's really, a lot of times it's based on the teacher or the coach. It's not always based on you. You have to implement, frankly. That's true. You have to implement, but you cannot speak at surface level. It's like the iceberg, right? Like what you see above the surface of the water is just a tiny little bit of what's below. We want to start getting below the surface. That's where we get better communication. That's where we can get to the heart of the matter with clients. All right, we're going to keep going here. So using the meta model allows for you to be more clear and specific in your communication, as well as help your clients have more clarity in their own want or need. Now, I do want to touch on this. This is my philosophy when it comes to sales and when it comes to applying anything that I'm teaching, specifically this stuff in the next 2 sessions, the one today and next week, is that relationship first and rapport always. So even if you want to drill down with somebody, think to yourself, is by drilling down into what they're saying, is that going to help with relationship? And can I do it in a way that keeps the rapport intact? Because if somebody comes at you with a generalization, like you always do something, and you have a snotty response back, like always, I don't think I always do something. Is that putting the relationship first? Is that building rapport versus learning how to get curious? Okay. So think about relationship first, rapport always. And then there's a few things that when you ask a question back, again, today is all about asking questions. When you ask a question back, I want you to keep in mind these 6 things. First, you're going to pace the other person initially. Now, I have a training on this inside the Sales Maven Society. It's called The Key to Closing More Sales. If you haven't watched that, I would encourage you to maybe work that into your schedule this week, or even go and just revisit the part where I talk about pacing and leading. So I'm going to give you an example of, let's say that those of you who are joining, if you didn't get to hear Kim's win from this week, where she had somebody who her initial reaction was to send Kim a message and say she was unhappy and she wanted her money back. Now, if Kim had gone back to her and said, now, calm down, don't be so dramatic, don't be so quick to ask for something, that's not pacing. But instead, Kim got curious. She thought to herself, how can I keep relationship intact? How can I check back and ask her a question? Pace her first. Okay, so pacing is not like going back and attacking because you feel attacked. Pacing is like getting interested, but paying attention to their rate of speech, paying attention to their body language if you're in person or you can hear their voice. But even in email, it's like pacing them. If somebody sends an email and says, I want my money back, then I would say, great, let's talk about this. May I ask you a couple questions first? So I'm pacing them. I'm not saying yes, I'm not saying no, but I'm saying, can I ask you a couple questions first? I'm asking permission. I'm going to pace them first. One of the things you can also do is acknowledge the other person with phrases like, I understand, or okay, or thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing that you're, frustrated that you weren't able to get on this morning. Let me check in with you about that, right? The next thing, we talked about this last week of overcoming objections. This is a great time to bring back in backtracking. So when you're asking questions, you want to backtrack what they say. So you're going to pace them, you're going to let them know you understand to their answer, and then you're going to backtrack their answer. You often need to soften your voice when you are in this place of helping to get them more specific, you want to soften your voice. Otherwise it comes off of like aggressive or defensive. So soften your voice a little bit. I would say be curious and even act a little less sure of yourself. Avoid asking it as if it sounds like you already know the answer. I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where somebody asks you a question, but they ask it in a way like, so tell me, Nikki, what is the thing that you would say that you really like about me and the work that I do based on what we just did? Like with the way they're asking that, it feels like they already have an idea in their mind of what they expect for me to say, right? So now I'm trying to like, am I going to be able to give them the answer that they want? Now I feel like I feel like I'm in the hot seat. Whereas if you went back and said, now, would you be willing to share with me what is something that you really got out of the work that we did? And what did you find to be the most valuable? That's me being curious, acting like I'm not really sure what you're going to say here. People are much more likely to answer your questions, by the way, when you act this way. Now, you don't want to act like you're not confident about who you are in your business. I don't mean that, but when you're asking the question, it's okay to be a little less sure that you would know the answer, because then they are more comfortable giving you a truthful answer, frankly. And then number 6 is use softening phrases. I do teach a whole module on softening phrases as well. So that's in the Sales Maven Society for you, but here's just 3 of them. And you put these softening phrases in front of the question that you're going to ask. So we're going to get to questions here in just a second. We're going to use a softening phrase like, I'm curious, or I'm wondering, or is it okay to ask? Notice how I soften my voice every time. I even tilt my head just a little bit. I don't know if you noticed that, but I tilt my head just a little bit and say, I'm curious, or I'm wondering, is it okay to ask? My voice softens and I curl up at the end of my sentence. And then I'm going to ask the question. Okay. So those are the 6 things to think about. And it may feel like a lot. You might be going like, I can't think about 6 things. But even if you just pick one to start with, get comfortable doing it, and then add in another one, get comfortable doing that one, add in another one. And pretty soon you're going to be like, this is how I show up in conversation. This is why people are starting to notice I'm a much better communicator today than I was 6 months ago. So this is time release learning. I will say that there's time release learning to this. That means you have to try things out. You have to continue to add. I hope that you'll continue to go back to this workbook and look for ways of asking better questions and how to ask questions in a way so that they land soft, so people want to answer your question. So just know that this is a work in progress. This isn't a like, you learn it today and tomorrow you've got it, or at the end of the 2 hours today that you've got it. It takes some time. It's okay. I'm still working. I'm a work in progress too. I've been doing this for NLP studies now for, I don't even know how many years, 14. I'm still a work in progress. I'm still working to be a better communicator. Okay. All right. So let's talk about generalization. It's the process again by which pieces of a person's model become detached from their original experience and come to represent the entire experience. These often show up in 2 forms. They show up as universal qualifiers and model operators. And I want you to get comfortable with this because here's the purpose. Learning how to recognize and then have a response when you get a generalization is going to help you be more prepared to support your prospects and clients in overcoming their own limiting beliefs. I know some of you work specifically on overcoming limiting beliefs. Many of you actually, now that I'm thinking about who's on our training with us today, many of you are helping clients overcoming limiting beliefs. I know Michelle Kaplan for sure works on this. Lisa Fisher works on this. Many of you, I think Verla works on this. Many of you work on this with your clients. So being able to recognize possible blind spots in a prospect or a client's thinking pattern often gives you ideas on how to best earn their business or suggest necessary changes when working with them. So let's talk about universal qualifiers. These are those absolutes. These are those overgeneralizations. Here are some examples of some. Never. I've never been able to do such and such, whatever it is. I've never been able to, pick out the right colors for makeup, right? That could be a universal qualifier. Or people always shut me down when I try to talk about my business. Universal qualifier. If we say everything or everybody, like everything is falling apart, or everybody is more interested in talking about X, Y, and Z instead of what I want to talk about, right? Or nobody or no thing, nothing. So there's nothing I can do to get better at sales, or nobody wants to hear about my offer. These are universal qualifiers. You probably are already starting to think of ones that you have that clients show up with in their conversation, or prospects show up in their conversation with you. And the last one is all. There's probably more, but these are the 5 that I want to give you today. Like all, let me think about a phrase for all. So this happens all the time. This happens all the time. That's a when you hear something like that from somebody, when you can start to go like, ooh, universal qualifier, I might want to check it out. I might need to ask a better question here to help them get some wiggle room, to add some flexibility to their thinking patterns here. So when you get a universal qualifier, there's 2 ways to engage. One is to repeat the universal qualifier as a question. Here's an example of one. I never participate in group programs when I sign up for them. So you might ask this person, you've never participated in any group program in order to achieve your goals? Notice how I change my voice. So you've never participated? So I'm going to repeat the question back to them. Or number 2 is you can give a counter example. Somebody might say, I always struggle with closing sales. I might say, so I'm curious, has there ever been an instance where you were able to close a sale easily? That's a counter example. I'm going to give you one more that's not in your workbook, just because I want to get you in this like thinking pattern around this. Nobody responds to my email offers. I actually get this one a lot from clients. So I might say, nobody has ever responded to an email offer you put out. I got to ask a question. I got to do it soft. Or a counter example, all the people I know aren't interested in hearing about my business. I might add a softening phrase here. So I'm wondering, is there even one person you know that may not yet know about what you do? It feels like a really wordy. I feel like I could have phrased that a little bit better, but that still is a counter example. Now, before you kind of dig in and start applying this, because I want you to start playing with these a little bit, I want you to think about results of applying this technique by addressing blind spots. Again, with prospects and clients, you send the message that when we work together, things will change because I see you, I hear you, and I will guide you towards success. So this is one of the reasons to start to recognize universal qualifiers, because I don't know, but I think if you ask yourself, do you want to send the message to prospects and clients? Hey, when we work together, things will change. Not things can change. I'm saying things will change because I see you, I hear you, and I will guide you towards success. All right. You're going to get the opportunity to play with this now. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to list 3 universal qualifier statements that prospects say that limit them from achieving their outcome, or possibly even limit them from hiring you. What are 3 things that come to mind? And I'm going to give you I'm actually going to give you both exercises. Hold on a second. I'm going to give you one more step. So I want you to complete page 20 in your workbook. And then I want you to, they're both on page 20. I want you to complete step 1 and step 2. So I want you to write down the universal qualifiers. And then I want you to decide, am I going to repeat it as a question, or am I going to give a counter example? Try to at least do one of each. but come up with a response. So using the statement you created, draft a response by either repeating the question or offering a counterexample. I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do this. I don't think it's going to take very long. And then I'll come back and answer any questions that come to mind so far about universal qualifiers. So go ahead. We are going to come back at 10. Let me think about this now. I know we're not all on the time zone, so it kills me. So I'm going to say if it's 37, we are going to come back at 42 after the hour. So whatever your time is, 42 after the hour. Go ahead and do this. All right, come on back. How did it go? I feel like some of you are still working. Can't see all of you because some of you have your camera off. I'm going to wait 20 seconds. All right. Question, comment, universal qualifiers. How did it go, the exercise? Was it easy? Do you have a question? Do you need some support around it? Please just unmute yourself. I can't see all of you on the screen, so unmute yourself, and I'd love to hear from you.
Nikki, I have one.
Hi, Lisa.
And trying this out. Hello, and by the way, you look beautiful.
Thank you. My stylist helped me.
All right, so I'm doing one, which is I always struggle with shopping for clothes. And so my response in trying the counterexample is, I'm curious, has there ever been a time you found something that you've enjoyed? Would that be?
Yeah, that's a perfect counterexample in that.
Yep. Okay.
You got it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. And then you could dig deeper, right? Like once you ask that question and they go, well, yeah, I have this one thing that I really love, then we could ask like, well, what specifically about it do you really love? Or what specifically about it, that experience of finding it, or where were you when you found it, or what was going on? You can dig a little bit deeper with it when you get that. Yeah, okay. Good.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Michelle, I saw your hand. Just unmute, my friend.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess my question is, I was like kind of giving an option, and I don't know what the best things from an NLP, but I guess the objection or the statement I usually get is, I don't have time, like to work with you because I'm always working. Right. So here they want to kind of switch. I'm always working. And so I was kind of replying back, I'm curious, like, because I guess the part I want to say is like, are you always working, or do you feel like you're always working? And that's how I usually respond back.
Yeah. Yep. So you're doing it, you're giving the counterexample, and then you're giving them a little bit of you are giving them a little bit of a wiggle to like revise their statement. And that's the idea of backtracking too, of like, but by stating it back in a question, it gives them an opportunity to revise. Now you're giving them a little bit of an out here, and you go, so you're always working, or do you just feel like you're always working? So you want to be careful on how you phrase it, or sorry, not how you phrase it, but your voice quality when you do it, so it doesn't feel like you're putting them on like, oh, are you a liar?
Right. Or just like, or judgy. I don't want to judge somebody.
Right. But the way you said it back was perfect.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I like it. It works. And then we can dig in a little bit more around it. Yeah. Okay. Hey, Pam, I saw your hand. How are you, friend?
Yeah, good. I have one, and I'm not sure I'm on the right track. So
well, let's check it out.
Okay, here's what I have, because I do employee benefits, and I so I put this is what a business owner would say to me. I know all my employees would not be interested in what you have to offer. And so I put, I'm curious, do you think even one of them might want to hear about how they would be able to protect their paycheck due to an accident or an illness?
Okay, I think you're close. I'm gonna let me play with what you said back.
Okay.
So instead of saying, do you think, so I like that you say, so I'm curious. Is there a chance even one person would be interested in?
Okay.
So I might do that than the do you think, because a do you think is a yes or no.
Right.
Is there even, I mean, is there even one is still a yes or no, but it feels a little softer to me.
Yeah. No, I like that better.
Okay.
And no, that's way softer. The other thing is, instead of just saying, is there a chance even one? Because he might think, well, yeah, one, but it's not going to be worth it if it's just one.
You could say even
So,
a few.
yeah, I was going to
Yeah.
say, okay.
Yeah.
Is there a chance even a few? Okay. All righty. Thank you, Nikki.
Yeah, you're welcome. Did I see another hand?
Yeah, I did.
Kim, I see you know. Yeah, hi.
Oh, okay. So this is one and again, I might be in the wrong market, but I've received this a couple times. I'm retired. I don't have any career goals. So my thought would be to counterexample and go, I'm curious, are there things you want to accomplish after retirement?
Yep, that totally works. I like it. I will say, I wonder if, now, not everybody likes this, so this one might not actually work, but I feel like a lot of times with retirement, the thing that comes up, or the phrase that's coming up for me, is like this bucket list. Now, some people, I know somebody just told me recently, I hate the term bucket list. So it might not resonate with people. Who here likes bucket list? Anybody? Okay, we got a couple. Who here hates bucket list? Anybody? Michelle hates it. No. Okay. I think Sky was that you're like, no, I hate it too.
No, I don't hate it.
Okay. But you don't love it. Okay. So maybe we go like, so I'm curious, is there even one thing that you want to accomplish in your retirement? Or you could say, I'm curious. Yeah, I think you have to ask, is there even one thing? Or is there something that you'd like to accomplish? Right? Like, yeah, I think it works, Kim. Sorry, I'm trying to like make it better, but I think it works.
Well, and I had like two verbs, like, do you want to accomplish or experience? So I was like, oh, depending on what it is,
Yeah.
is there even, what is the thing you want to experience now that you're retired?
You could also ask, so I'm curious, when you were planning for retirement, was there even one thing you wanted to experience, or was there anything you wanted to experience during retirement? Because don't they say like people who retire that have nothing, like it's like people who work, and they retire and then they're gone a year later, because it's like, not that you want to say that to somebody, but.
Well, and I thought about to ask, but I didn't want it to be, what's the word, too domineering. Like, so what was it that you were working for so you would enjoy in your retirement?
Be careful with that one. That feels a little bit like possibly confrontational. I know that's not your intent.
Right. That's what I was like, oh, that if there was a way I could ask, and I curious that way. Oh,
Yeah.
so what were you working towards then for your retirement? But again, that's kind of judgy.
I mean, it's the voice makes the difference. So I'm trying to think if I could say it. I'm not totally sure how I would say it. So I would say, I'm curious. When you were planning for your retirement, what were you most looking forward to?
Yeah.
Maybe
Got it.
Yeah. So play with it a little bit. All right, we're gonna keep going. Ready? Let me. Oh wait, Nancy. Nancy, I see that you raised
No,
your
I raised my hand to agree that I didn't like bucket
Oh.
list.
Okay, thanks, friend. I just wanted to check, make sure I didn't miss anybody. All right, I'm going to share my screen again and we're going to keep going. All right. So now let's talk about model operators. These are keywords that reveal a person's mode of operating. I feel like you're going to like really recognize these in your life. Should. I always love to share I've shared this a million times, but my friend Vicki Legman one time said in a training that we were co-training something. And she said, my friend says to me, don't should on me and I won't should on you. I don't know. I just love that. Maybe it's because I like to curse and it kind of sounds like a curse phrase, but the should, we know like should can be dangerous. Must, have to, got to, need to. Right? Do you recognize some of these in your clients' statements to you? I should be able to do this, or I have to figure this out, or I need to figure this out on my own, or like any of these could work. There's also, these are, I just realized I didn't clarify this. These are examples of model operators of necessity. There's also model operators of possibility and impossibility. And there are things like can or can't, will or won't, may not, choose to or choose not to. Can also show up as, again, we're talking about generalizations here. So, can do this, will do this, may do this, choose to or choose not to. These are model operators of possibility and impossibility. So how do you engage when a client is generalizing or a prospect is generalizing in this way? Also, ask yourself too. I want you thinking about this. Like I want you to have two minds as you're going through this training. How can this benefit my clients and my prospects in the conversation so I can help them get their solutions and deliver on, overcoming their problem, their need, their want. And then the other side of it is thinking about your own communication, the way that you communicate. Are you doing this? And is it serving your business, or is there something that we could tweak or change in the way that you are communicating that would attract your ideal clients and repel the people who are not a good fit? Okay. So one way to engage when a model operator is used is to ask a question. I love questions, right? So somebody says to you, I should be able to figure this out on my own. You could ask, well, what will happen if you're not able to figure it out on your own? Or I can't afford to do this. You could soften this one. Is it okay to ask, what's stopping you from being able to afford to do this? Or what would happen if you could afford it? Giving them some freedom in their mind to like imagine what things would be like when they can afford it. So using these skills, how this is going to impact your business by applying these language skills to your interactions, you create wiggle room. I love that term. It's something I say a lot. Wiggle room for your prospect and clients, because I think our minds sometimes want to be very black and white. And when we can help them create some wiggle room, they're oftentimes able to come up with their own solution. So when a prospect or client is able to be guided to coming up with their own solution, the solution that they come up with will always have so much more meaning to them because it's theirs. And they'll also be more likely to take action as a result. Now, just to like address this a little bit, sometimes I find personally, it can be frustrating to help clients, to guide them to make interaction or make change in their life, not interaction, but make change in their life. And then they sometimes forget that it was through the work that they did with you that these changes have happened. And maybe it's just me and maybe it's ego getting in the way, but sometimes I feel frustrated by this. And every time this happens, I just have to take a step back and remind myself that ultimately their goal was met, and it's not about me. It's the relationship first, rapport always. I know I had an interaction last week with a client who we've made some pretty big shifts in the work that we've done, but the client comes back of like, I don't know. I don't really know what else I could possibly work with you on. Like, I'm not even sure there's really anything else for us to do together. And it feels a little dismissive, like, but yet, because of the changes that we did make and the things they have implemented, there have been these like an influx of revenue into their business on something they were giving away for free. And it's a big influx of revenue. But like, I have to take a step back and go, even if there isn't this like give credit where credit is due, that's okay, because there's more revenue coming into their business, and being okay with that. So I just want to address this a little bit, because sometimes, and maybe it's, again, I could be the only person that ever feels this way, but in case you relate to this, I just want you to check yourself a little bit and learning to be okay with people coming up with their own solutions that you guide them to, and having impact and result in the world, and being okay that that's enough. Because there will be the other clients that are like, thank you so much. I love you. You're amazing. You've helped my business. Like, we'll have everything in between. But as long as we're helping people be guided to coming up with our own solutions, this is one of the results that can happen when you help people like get over these model operators, get over these universal qualifiers. Like, this is why the meta model is so powerful. Okay, so I'm going to give you an exercise now. I want you to list 3 model operator statements that you've heard from a prospect that may limit them from achieving their outcome and, again, or hiring you. Once you list those 3, then I want you to use those statements and draft your response in the form of a question. Okay. So I'm going to give you, I feel like maybe I didn't give you enough time last time. So here's what I'm going to do. I am going to give you 6 minutes this time. So we're going to come back at 5 after the hour. Go ahead, get started. All right, come on back. How did that one go? Questions, comments? Need some help with one? Hi, Lisa.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
This just happened last week, and this came, so it's a double. I feel like it's a double MO. All right. So this was from a gal who is coming up on the end of her year program.
Yeah.
With me. And so I would love some feedback on how to respond back. So it's something like this. I feel I should be farther along in my styling confidence, and I need to be able to do this on my own by now.
Okay. What did you come up with?
Kind of stuck. And this is, I feel like where I was with her too. I was like, and so what I had asked is there an area, a specific area you can share with me that you feel you should be farther along with? And
what specifically, or what specific area do you feel like you should be farther along with?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
And then I feel like I should do this on my own. What you could say, what specifically makes you think I might say have to, and I might change it from should. I might say, what specifically makes you think you have to do this on your own? Or you could also say, I'm curious, what what makes you think that what makes you think that you should do this on your own when most others cannot? Like you could change that and put that in there a little bit. Yeah, of helping. Now, you and I talked about this in your VIP day yesterday. We talked about analog versus digital thinking.
Yeah.
I should have actually added this into the workbook. If you guys have heard me talk about analog versus digital thinking is yes, no, black, white, true, false, love, hate. It's like you only have two options. That's digital thinking. Most people who are stuck in their life or in a particular situation, we oftentimes get stuck in digital thinking. It's like, I should do this or I shouldn't, or it's, so digital thinking, and it's almost always to our detriment, like digital thinking. And so we need to help clients get more in what's called analog thinking. So if you think about a light switch, the kind of light switch where it's like, it's either on or it's off. It's like you only got two modes. That's digital thinking. But if you think about like the one that has the dimmer switch where you can like turn the brightness up, and as you turn, like it's like it gets brighter and brighter. So that's like analog thinking. And so helping clients understand the like where they started and like the journey, like how much brighter has it become for them. What can sometimes get in our way is that we forget that we started here, it was pitch black. And then now we're here and the lights are on, but it still seems kind of dim. And then we forget about this progress between like here and here. Like what happened here? There was some progress. And so this is one of the reasons that you do want to think about. I'm kind of off topic here, but one of the reasons you want to think about when you're working with clients that you have these check-ins and you talk about, you guys know that, especially those of you who work with me privately, what were your takeaways from today? When I do a training, what were your takeaways for today? What's one thing you're going to put into action? That's helping people start to understand and recognize these like shifts. Because at some point, they're going to make it all the way down here and still think they haven't made progress because they're only comparing it to like where they are today and where they were last week. They're forgetting about all this progress, right? I wish I had like a switch I could show them, but hopefully you guys get this concept. So when I hear that, I'm like, she's in digital thinking. We got to get her into analog. So again, this is where you get curious. This is when you start asking better questions. Okay. Anybody else? You're welcome. Question, comment? Going once? Hey, Pam.
Hi there. So
And the
can you
furlough.
hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I was trying this one, but I couldn't come up with much other than we have to have more employees before we want to put a benefits plan in place.
We have to have more employees before we put benefits in place.
Or we should have more employees.
Or we should have.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we should have more employees before we put benefits in place. So I would probably want to ask a question here of like, what's stopping you from let me think about it. I'm struggling with this one. Like what specifically leads you to believe that the employees you have now won't be more likely to stay because of benefits? Like I would probably phrase it something around there.
More likely, or something like, especially if I can find out if they're looking for more employees.
Yeah.
Do you feel that providing benefits could attract more employees.
So
to
you
your
could
business.
say, so we need to have more, or we need to have more employees before we add benefits.
Right.
So have you considered that having benefits may actually attract more of the right employees? Like
Right.
checking in around that. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank
good.
you.
You're welcome. Hey, Verla, I saw your hand go up, friend.
So I often hear a version of this, or sometimes I hear a version of this. I don't want to, or I choose not to spend that amount of money for this. And so I usually acknowledge first. I usually
That's
say,
pacing.
I get it's quite an investment.
Yeah.
With that one, I might go, and I wanted to know what you thought about it. I might ask a question then. Can you tell me more about that? But I was curious what you thought about that and where you would
Yeah,
go.
so you definitely can use that in here. Because we're practicing model operators, it's like kind of asking back the question, but model operators isn't always the answer, right? There's many techniques that you can apply here. But if you think about if somebody says, I'm not willing to invest that, or I wouldn't invest that kind of money in that type of a training. So I guess I would want to know, like, so what would you invest that kind of money in? Or what would you invest in a training like this? I might ask that.
Okay, because this becomes really, it's really at the front now because I'm getting ready to launch the dating consulting service. So
Yeah.
Right. And it's going to be a little bit high end. So we're going to see what the market's going to bear here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to go into another technique there, but I'm going to keep us on track. We're going to keep going. But maybe I don't know if you want to stay for office hours, Verla, but we might be able to visit this during office hours too, and think about the way that you're positioning that. All right, I'm going to share a screen and we're going to keep going. All right, so we're going to move on to deletions. Deletions is the process, again, where we selectively pay attention to a certain dimension of our experience and exclude others. These often show up in 3 forms. I recognize I have a typo in the workbook, by the way. I said 4 and it's 3, so I apologize for that. But these are nominalizations, simple deletions, and comparative deletions. I think you're going to recognize some of these as we go through there. So let's talk about nominalizations. This is process words which have been frozen in time, making them nouns. So process words frozen in time, making them nouns. And how do you overcome these? You ask the question, what specifically does this mean to you? Or what time period or people are relevant for this? Okay, so here are some examples of some nominalizations that people might do. They might say, I can't make a decision. I can't make a decision. Now it sounds like they've kind of changed it to make it's like this thing, right? This decision now becomes a thing. So you might ask, what specifically do you want to decide? Or I need more visibility. You could say, how will you begin to be more visible? I'm thinking about Maureen, who's on the call with us today, who just had a client featured in the Wall Street Journal. Like people, this is probably one for her specifically. Like people come to her saying, I need more visibility. So we want to check to see, like, you could also say, what specifically are you willing to invest to become more visible? This is another way to tweak that a little bit. Somebody might say, I want more communication from you. So you might say, how could I communicate to meet your needs? So instead of getting defensive, we're just asking questions in this particular case. So supporting a client to change these statements back to verbs allows for the flexibility in the situation and in the relationship. So when you hear these, where people have taken something and made it now a noun, in this case, a decision, visibility, communication, we got to change them back to verbs to get that flexibility, that wiggle room. Now here's the next thing is simple deletions, is where they fail to specify a person or a thing. So we would ask here, whom specifically or what specifically. Here are some examples of simple deletions. I am struggling. You would ask, what specifically are you struggling with? Or they aren't responding. Whom have you contacted? You see, there's a lot of information missing there. Now, again, you may have some of this in the context of a conversation, but oftentimes people will make these statements and you're like, you assume that you know what they're talking about. That can be detrimental to the relationship to make assumptions that you know. So you might want to just check to be sure that you're on the same page. So if a client says there's no time, what are you specifically struggling to find time to do? I don't have time. What specifically do you not have time for? See how you can like change these up a little bit. There was something else I wanted to say about this. Oh, here's what I want to say about the deletions, simple deletions. A lot of times when clients are asking me to rewrite or put some tweaks to their messaging, like I wrote this email, Nikki, can you take a look at it? Oftentimes, this is where simple deletions show up because we know what we mean when we write, but we forget, will the other person know what we mean when we are right, when they're reading this? So oftentimes I'll ask people to put additional information in here because for the reader, that information is missing. So this is a place where oftentimes when you're writing, and myself included, I saw the email that you guys were going to get. I approved it. It didn't have the passcode in there. I don't need a passcode to get on here. So it was a simple deletion on my part, but see the havoc that it caused. I apologize for that, but by not having the password in there to you, because I know how to get onto the call. So it's that simple deletion, those places. This is often why when you're going to write offers and when you're going to put information out there, you need to have somebody else read it. You need to have somebody else's eyes on it. Okay. All right. So the last part of the deletions here, the third one is comparative deletions. This is good, better, best, worst, more, less, most, or least. So what you're going to do when you hear these in a client's language, in a limiting belief standpoint, right? Something that's limiting to them. Sometimes I like good, better, best. Like I actually use this with clients all the time. I want you to set a good, better, best goal for yourself or for this promotion that we're going to work on or whatever that is. But when you hear it and it's limiting them from having the results that they want, we're going to need to ask, compared to what or compared to whom? Okay, so here are some examples. It's the worst. The worst compared to what? I should be doing more. Who should you be doing more than? Or doing more compared to what? So when you hear these, when these show up in conversation, and also again, in your own language, take a step back and ask, am I checking in? Am I getting additional information? Am I helping people to start to see how they are limiting their thinking patterns to being like digital versus analog, what we already talked about? So deletions, again, is the process by which we selectively pay attention to certain dimensions in our experience and exclude others. So I want you to just take like a minute and I want you to ask yourself, Where am I doing this in my own communication with prospects and clients? And what will I do differently going forward? Now that you have seen these, read them, heard me talk about them, I want you to take, again, 1 minute and ask yourself, where am I doing this in my communication with clients? And what will I do differently going forward? Would you just make a note to yourself anywhere in the workbook about the answering this question? I realize I didn't give a space for it, but I want you to ask yourself. So I'm going to give you 45 seconds to do this because I've already been talking through the minute. Go ahead and do that now. All right. Here's what I'm wondering. Would you, if you feel comfortable, would you post like what's one thing you're going to do going forward differently after hearing about deletions? Would you post it in the chat for me? Actually, I want to take a question. I know there's a question really quickly about this, and then we're going to keep going for the sake of time. Blessy, would you unmute and ask your question?
Hi, Nikki. So this morning I just received anonymous feedback from my team, and it's sort of related to what you're discussing, and the feedback to two questions. The first question was, why do you feel overwhelmed at work? And the answer was lack of communication, all in uppercase. And the second question was, what's missing for feedback to fully help you grow? And the answer was, there is no feedback at all most of the time. We have yearly annual evaluations coming up, so I thought it would be the best time to sort of ask questions regarding communication and feedback. Mm-hmm. And one of the questions that you mentioned under specificity was how could I communicate to meet your expectations? And I think that would be a really nice question to ask.
Yeah. I agree.
And then what could I ask specific to there's no feedback at all? Because I know that's an extreme. I'm just surprised by these comments, and it's anonymous. So what kind of question can I ask to solicit more feedback, and what specifically?
Okay. Well, I do also want to just clarify on that. They say there's no feedback most of the time, right? Like it's kind of like there's no feedback most of the time. So that's implying there is some feedback. So just to like give some flexibility in your own thinking here, so that it sounds, when somebody says there's no feedback most of the time, I would want to know when, like, what I might say, what specifically, or when specifically Is there a lack of feedback in what type of a situation? So when specifically, in what type of a situation is there a lack of feedback? And how would you prefer the feedback to be given? It's two questions, two big questions. But we need to kind of understand, like, what are the situations where they're saying there's no feedback to? Because there is feedback some of the time. It's just most of the time there isn't, right? So most of the time is like they're adding some wiggle room there. What do you think of those?
Yeah, I love it. So you said when specifically and in what type of situation is there a lack of feedback?
Yeah.
And then
how would you like, and how specifically would you like the feedback to be given?
Okay.
Or delivered? I would say delivered.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right. Because I said I was going to take questions, now I've taken questions. Is there anybody else that has a burning question who has not spoken up yet? Okay, we're going to keep going. All right. Let's talk about distortions. Thank you, by the way, for those of you who posted in the chat. I did read your comments and I appreciate that you're going to take some action on this. So for distortions is the process which allows us to make shifts in our experience and pay more attention to some portion of the experience than others. Distortions often show up as mind reading. I love this. I love the concept of mind reading. I also love when people tell me they can read minds. So the purpose of learning how to recognize distortions is so you'll catch these and adjust your own language with prospects and clients. Notice when a client or prospect is making assumptions that do not serve them, and also have consumer protection for your own mind when people are selling to you and they're acting as if they can read your mind. Okay. So mind reading is acting if it's known what someone else is thinking or feeling. And instead of acting as if it's known what somebody else is thinking or feeling, here is what to do instead. It's to ask questions. And it's also to challenge your own limiting beliefs and statements. Here are some possible questions to ask. Are you jumping to a conclusion? And also, how do you know this? How do you know this? And are you jumping to conclusions? Examples: she will never buy from me. How do you know she'll never buy from you? Did she tell you that? No. You know, you get the no. I assume this. Okay. So that's that's jumping to a conclusion. Like, can we add some flexibility for this person to check and invite the person to buy from them and see what happens? Or everyone has already heard about my new offer. What makes you think everybody has already heard about your new offer? Well, I sent out an email. Okay. How many people opened the email versus how many people did you send it to? Is there a way to target the people who haven't opened the email and haven't heard about the offer? Is there a chance that somebody opened the email and didn't actually read the offer? Should we send them another email, right? We're just trying to get some flexibility here in these assumptions. Now, I want to dig into I feel like I could teach a whole class on mind reading. I may actually do this for the Sales Maven Society as one of your bonus trainings, because in your own language, this often shows up where you act as if you can read your client's mind instead of asking questions. So one of the things I'll often read in clients' emails, I also get these in the emails that people send me when they're trying to sell to me, and they'll be like, Nikki, I know what you're thinking. This is another email and I'm always like, how do you know what I'm thinking? We don't even know each other. Or I know you already know this. Are you jumping to a conclusion when you assume that you know what I know? So be really careful in the way that you're communicating. in your messaging out to prospective clients, because if you show up as if you are a mind reader, unless you like legitimately can read minds, like this is part of your like expertise and service, that you are a mind reader. People show up and pay you money to read their mind. Be really careful in how you're communicating out with clients, that I know what you're thinking. I know what you know. Here's what you need to know about blah, blah, blah. Be really careful with this type of messaging because it is a turnoff. So instead of saying, I know what you're thinking, ask somebody, what does this make you think of? What comes to mind when you hear the phrase blah, blah, blah? Ask questions. Okay, take a few minutes and come up with 3 mind reading statements. This is step 1, that clients or prospects say that presuppose them to be true. Again, think of the things that are limiting to them, that are stopping them from having what they want. And then number 2, or step 2 in this process, is to use these statements, or take the statements that you wrote down and create an appropriate question to check the presupposition. Are they jumping to conclusions? How do they know this to be true? Okay, go ahead and take, let's see, we are going to take 5 minutes and do this. So it's 10:30 or 11:33. We're going to come back at 11:38 or 38 after whichever hour it is for you. All right, go ahead and do that now. All right, how was that? Did you come up with some ideas where people are mind reading, catching some statements? Who has a question or a comment about this section? Hey, Verla.
Well, mind reading is an interesting thing because they can mind read from both a positive or a not so positive place, right?
Yeah.
And I was not good with coming up with mind reading relating to my business. I just kind of failed at this one, other than I've heard about this and I'm yes or no interested, because I never take I'm interested at face value, because we don't know why they're interested or what they've heard, right? So I always go into that so that I'm not assuming, right? I make sure we're on the same page about what this is and what the interest is. I learned that a long time ago, but
yeah. Well, again, it's good to have some recognition around like, what's the things that you know? I know you and I were messaging about this privately. What do you know and how can you apply it? What's working? I mean, there are times where, you know, you might use mind reading to your advantage. Just be careful with it with client interaction is kind of the point I will make there.
Yeah, well, I always ask a question then. So
yeah,
I'll ask a question like, I'm curious, what have you heard, if they're interested, that interested you?
Yeah.
Or I'm curious if you're willing to share, what have you heard, right? If they're saying, and I'm not interested, right? And it's all voice tone, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Nancy, I see that your hand's up, so I want to check in with you.
Well, when we came on this topic, I thought, oh, I have to be really cognizant. Sometimes I'm mind reading and thinking that no one is going to be, or no one's going to want to pay this additional money or whatever. And so I thought I need to look at myself first.
That's such a great awareness. Yes, there are so many times where we limit and hold ourselves back because we are mind reading, acting as if we know what people are thinking, what they're going to say, how they're going to decline the offer, or whatever it is. So thank you for bringing that into the room. I think that's a really important recognition on all of our parts. And I don't know how to tell you to like stop doing that in your life. I will say learning how to push through and do it anyway, even when you have these thoughts, are super beneficial to your business. To continue
awareness, self-awareness is the first step, right?
Yeah. a lot of people walk through life with no self-awareness, right? So any little bit of self-awareness that we can continue to like unfold, right? I always say we're a work in progress. All of us are a work in progress, continuing to move ourselves forward in some way or learn something new. And, you know, I feel like people who sign up for classes are similar in that I always say I'm a lifelong learner, right? Like, would any of you agree with that about yourself? Are you a lifelong learner? Yeah, some of you are like, yeah, for sure. Right. So this idea of like, again, I've got to put this in the workbook next year now, is that if you are in digital thinking, you think I either know it or I don't. But analog thinking is this lifelong learner. Like, I'm continuing to make a progression in my life. I'm continuing to get better at communicating. Why else would you sign up for a class, specifically this topic, if that wasn't important, right? So, okay, good. We're going to keep going. We are almost done. And then we're going to open it up to office hours here. There's one little section left that I want to offer you today, and that's some script idea of paying attention to your email messaging. So I wrote 2 examples here for you. So please let me share screen, and we're going to go through these 2 examples, give you an opportunity to maybe even create one or more of your own. So here is a sample email script where you see a lot of generalizations, deletions, and distortions kind of showing up. So this is a what not to do, right? This is on page 27 of the workbook, by the way. Starting out statements like, I know what you're thinking. You feel like you failed. You don't know why you're struggling. You just know it's time for things to change. Now, you might read that and know what it means to you as the reader, but do you actually know what the intent behind the person who wrote it is? Maybe they're intentionally being vague. That could be. But when you look at this, do you see this mind reading statement right here? I know what you're thinking. The deletion, you don't know why you're struggling. At what? Like, what are we talking about here? Next statement they might put, I feel like I just pulled like really this idea. I wrote this, but I wrote it based on emails that I get all day long. Introducing my new program. In this program, you'll gain insight you've always needed. Wait, hold on. Helps if I can read my own writing. In this program, you'll gain insight you always need to make changes. Plus, you'll have a ton of fun doing it. Do you see the universal qualifier in there? Mm-hmm. And really, does this actually resonate with somebody? Is somebody going to read this and go like, ooh, I know why I'm paying this person money. I know why I'm going to sign up for this program. So here's a counter example. Sorry, I realized I left off. You've been asking for more. Here it is. Get registered. I feel like this is so generic. Any one of us could put this message into our business right now today, and it would work without actually saying much, right? It's so generic. So here's a possible rewrite to it. Have you been struggling with what content to give away and what content you should charge for? Be specific. Our minds, our brains love when we can like say yes to something or no to something versus having to come up with all of it on our own. Frankly, our brains are lazy and we're not going to. So if you can put in your messaging, like what specifically do you want them to target and think about where they're struggling? Like what specifically is going on in your program? So if you're going to teach a class, make sure you're asking yourself, is the what specifically in there? Are you ready to stop the struggle and instead have a well laid out plan of what to do with your existing content for all of 2021? I think I just added the word all, which is a qualifier, but I did write that in here for all of 2021. Yeah. So when specifically, make sure you put that in here. So introducing content creation for revenue generation masterclass, which by the way is coming. So this masterclass is for you when? This is something that those of you in the Sales Maven Society, you know that when you write emails or you write offers and you tag me, I often will encourage you to go and ask, like, Who is this for? Like, whom specifically are we targeting? This masterclass is for you, or is for when you already have this, but are unsure about this. So give some specifics. So in this particular case, I love bullet points. I think it makes it easier to read. So tell them, like, help them self-identify by reading the message. Don't make it general. Like, this is something you want, sign up now. It's too general. You're asking their brain to do too much work. All right, so for additional details and to register, make sure you don't just say, like, tell them what to do. Click here. Make sure you're being really specific in your communication. All right, so I have a challenge for you. I want you to take just a couple minutes to do this. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to look at the last 5 emails that you've sent to prospects or clients and start to note any generalization, deletion, or distortion statements that you've made. Even if you just want to look at them and go, like, I'm just going to jot this down really quick. And then once you've jotted it down or you have it, I want you to step 2, rewrite it with some more clarity and see, like, would the message be better the next time I send it out when this information is included? So I know I didn't give you a heads up about looking at your emails, but if you would take, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do this. Take 5 minutes, look back at some emails, look for some deletions, some distortions, some generalizations, and ask yourself, how could I have been more clear? And just rewrite the statement. This is just a practice exercise. Go ahead and do this. We are going to come back at math 53 minutes after the hour. Go ahead. All right, come on back. Who found one in their emails? Anybody? Louise, you found one? Sky found one? Good. Good. Lisa found one too. Berla found one. Okay, good. Good. Question, comment about the messaging that you're putting out and catching these, or anyone you want to share with the group. I'm happy to hear. Yeah, Louise.
I had one that was, I know this isn't for you, offering something, letting somebody know about a class I'm offering. And I know they won't be interested, but they may know someone who's interested. So, so I thought I could change this probably isn't for you, which is less mind reading, but still indicates I realize that this is not something that they personally would be interested in.
Yeah, I would say this may not be for you.
Okay.
Yeah. Berla?
I had lunch with a client a couple of weeks ago, and so I did a follow-up proposal to him for something he asked for. And in the proposal, I just kind of bottom lined it because he's a business person. And what I found was, I know you will really benefit. I know this will really benefit you right now. And I felt like, had I said, I feel this will really enhance both their professional and personal life at this time, that might have been a better approach.
So even when you're saying I know or I feel, here's one thing I will share with you about the saying I feel works to a kinesthetic, a thinker, processor. Somebody who's a high visual learner, that messaging will not resonate. So you want to be careful even saying like, I feel, and I remember this because years ago, when I was still working, it was my very first professional sales job, and I worked my way up in this company. I became their national sales manager, and I was at lunch with my boss and the VP of Hitachi, which ended up becoming my boss. I ended up going to work for Hitachi, but I remember he was this like, say it like it is, very direct businessman. And we were at lunch, and my boss was this really high kinesthetic like she had a high kinesthetic, was kind of her strongest modality. And so she spoke in a lot of kinesthetic phrasing. And she said, so how does that feel to you? And I remember him looking at her, and he said, he was quite abrupt, frankly. But he said, how does that feel to me? Like, why would you even ask that question? Like, that's completely irrelevant to this conversation. How does it feel to me? And I remember I felt like he was a little bit shaming to her. It was a great lesson for me, because I was like, oh, I'm never saying that to him, because wow, he really came back at her hard. And he was just kind of that way in general. He's actually a really great guy. I learned a lot from him. I loved him as a boss, but he just had this biting way of correcting somebody. And I just remember going like, oh, careful of using feel in business situations. And the more I learned about NLP, the more I realized like, oh, his strongest modality was, he was a high visual thinker, learner. That was his strongest modality. So I get that he didn't get the feel part of it. Now, with all of that said, Verla, I want to advocate for the part of you that will stand in her credibility and go, this will impact you, right? So instead of saying, I know, or instead of saying, I feel, leave that stuff out and just say, what was the last part of the statement?
It will really enhance both your personal and professional life at this time.
Yeah, this will enhance your personal and professional. Leave off the I know and the I feel. You do not need them in the messaging. I almost think it's a way to like, it's softening your credibility, because you don't want to take this hard approach. But when you're talking about who you are, what you know, and what you do, stand in your credibility and state it as fact. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Who else? Question, comment? All right, here's what I'm going to ask you to do really quickly. Not really quickly, like you have to do it, but here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Please turn to page 49 of your workbook. It's the last page in the workbook. There in section 2 there, please fill out your takeaways, up to 3 takeaways from today. What did you get out of this training? And what's one action step that you'll take to implement what you learned today? Would you take a minute to fill that out, please? And then we'll come back, talk about it, wrap up the day. All right. As we wrap up the portion of the training, now I'm going to stay on the line and do Q&A office hours for anybody who would like some additional access, has questions, anything they want to share. But for the sake of wrapping up on time, I'm going to thank you so much for being here. If you can stay, awesome. I'd love to hear some takeaways. And if you need to go, thank you so much for being here. I will look forward to seeing you next week, where we are going to be talking about another NLP process that's known as being artfully vague. It's the Milton model. Like, of everything, I'm going to say that is my favorite, even though I love what we did today. That what we're going to do next week is some of my favorite stuff. So I hope you'll come back for it and participate. The recording will be available later today. It will be posted on that same page that you got the email for. Have a great day for those of you who need to go. Those of you who are going to stay, love to hear a takeaway or feedback, anything you'd like to share, any question that you still have out there for you. Who would like to go first? Sky, hi.
Yeah, hi. So basically, I really need that training that your email example was talking about, the content creation training. Are there any tools or specific learning modules that you would point me to in Sales Maven or in upcoming trainings? I'm really focused on content creation and really fixing my website and social media.
So let's see. For content creation, so it is coming. I'm going to teach it in December. I'll actually give you guys an offer to sign up for it next week. So that's
count me in.
Okay, good. Love to have
I'll be
you
there.
So it's coming, but specifically around content, I'm trying to think of some resources for you inside the Sales Maven Society that's around content creation. I will say, from a language standpoint, because you said you're working on your website, you might look at, if you haven't gone through the email, there's 2 modules. There's one in fundamentals that's called Getting a Response. And then there's one in the bonus section under additional resources that's called Effective Email Techniques, I think. Though there's some content in there that would work, doesn't just have to be for email, but it will work for some of your website stuff. So it's going to talk about laying it out. It's going to teach you about getting rid of if statements and things like that. I think that would be helpful for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'll keep thinking about it. I'll tag you in the group if I can think of some additional stuff that's specifically around content.
Sounds great.
I think
Thank
we do have a content calendar. I'll have to ask Kathy if it was in there. We try to update it every year for you to have like a content calendar, which we'll update again for 2021 and put it in there for you. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep. Okay. Who's next?
I have a question.
Hi, Kim. Yeah, question.
So this goes back to page 22 when we were doing the MO model operator exercise. And so this is something that I hear frequently.
Okay.
And my step 1 was listing, things that I hear a lot. I've got to take care of this thing, grandkids, church, volunteer, whatever it is, first. So I've got to take care of, the thing first. So my step 2 in recreating it, I was thinking about using what would happen if you could honor, the thing plus what you would like to do. Or,
yeah,
I wanted to,
with that. What would happen if you were able to take care of the church and do this thing for yourself?
Okay.
Or what would it look like for you? Now, look like is a visual term, so you got to be careful, because a high kinesthetic will be like, I can't see it, right? But what would it be like? Or yeah, what would it be like if you were able to do this? And now you emphasize but you emphasize it softly. What would it be like if you were able to take care of the grandkids and able to do this thing for yourself.
And often the thing that I get next is I will be too busy. Like I felt like sometimes it feels like it goes down a potential rabbit hole or well, then I'll be too busy. And then I'll, and like the whole point would be so that you're not too busy, so that you have time to honor and respect all the things.
So where I would go next with that is I would probably pull in a story and say, so I'm going to pace them first and say, that is a really common concern. I actually am working with a client right now who had a very similar situation. Now, only say things that are true, but my guess is you probably have worked with a client who had a similar, right? Like, because you're saying I hear this one often. So, I had a client with similar situation, and what they found was this actually gave them more time back into their schedule because X, Y, and Z, whatever the answer is.
Okay. Perfect.
I'm just laughing. I just read something that Sonia posted to me that I always say that the next tip or tool is my favorite. It's true. I have a lot of favorites, Sonia. I don't know if she's still on the call. Let me see. She is. I do have a lot of favorites. My family makes fun of me too, because I'll say like, oh, this is my favorite client, or this is my favorite. Yeah. And they're like, everybody's your favorite person, Nikki. In the moment, they are. I do love my content too. All right, who's next? Question, comment. Hi, Michelle. Hold on a second. We don't have your audio quite yet. Try again.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, there you are.
Sorry, just a logistical question. I was on the website trying to find, you had like, I don't know if it was on YouTube or wherever, but the 5 steps in detail, not the trainings for fundamentals, but just the like
song
step
staircase?
1. Yeah, I couldn't find it. Is that something?
In the, was it 5 different trainings, or was it just the audiobook of the Sewing Staircase?
I didn't think it was 5 separate. I didn't know if it was a training or it could have just been the book. Yeah.
It's here, I'm going to show you where it is. I'm going to share a screen and we're going to pull it.
Okay.
Give me a second here. I have so many things open on my
I know.
Let me close some things before I share a screen with y'all, because you're gonna be like, geez, Nikki, that's insane. Okay, now I'm gonna share a screen. And I'm gonna pull up. Oh, hey, Michelle, you might recognize what that was.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to have that up either.
I don't care.
Okay, so if you go into the hamburger right here,
Yes.
as long as you're logged in, go to additional resources, go to bonus training,
Mm-hmm.
and it's right here, sales training, why you're losing sales. So it's basically 9 through 14.
Oh, got it.
Do you think that's what you're talking about?
I think so.
Yeah. I think it is, but if it isn't, please.
It's just audio, correct?
There should be videos too.
Okay, so maybe I didn't see those. Yeah, I'll do that.
We tend to set things up with audio and video, but now I'm not even seeing the audio in here. It depends on where you got it.
Yeah, it was on the old one, so I can't remember.
Yeah,
It was like,
I think it's this. So if you check and see if this isn't it, I'll find it.
Great, thank you.
Figure it out. Yeah, you're welcome. Who else? Who's next?
Nikki?
Yes.
Okay. Hi there. My meeting got changed, so I was able to get back on. So this is just where we can ask general questions, right?
You got it. Go ahead.
Okay, so kind of going over the material you went, one of my other things that I hear, like if I'm reaching out to a prospective business, is, oh, we already have benefits. We're good. And so how to, say something to the effect that, oh, that's great. Perhaps, usually I say, that's great. Perhaps it might make sense to review what, maybe, review what you currently have in place and see how we might be able to work alongside your benefits or what have you.
So if somebody says we already have benefits,
and then they say we're good.
We're good. Yeah. I would say that. So you pace them first. Excellent. So happy to hear that you're happy with the benefits. Would you be willing to consider looking at some additional benefits that you may not be aware of yet? I would probably ask it like that. Because the fact of the matter is, if they're not even willing to give you the time of day, they're not your client.
Okay.
Would you be willing, softening phrase, to look at some additional benefits that you may not, that's wiggle room versus saying that you don't know about, that you may not be aware of yet. We're going to talk about some of this phrasing next week too, but this idea of like giving some wiggle room, like, and they're like, oh, maybe I will. Great. Let's set up a time to chat about it.
You know what? I love that. And it creates curiosity because they're like, I'm not aware of everything. And they're like what? So I like that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Nikki, I want to ask if you would repeat, when you were pacing them with the confirmation, would it, excellent, I'm so glad to hear you already have benefits, or that they're good?
Let's see. How did she say it, Pam? What did you say said? We already have benefits. We're good.
Yes. So basically I'm glad you brought up the question, Kim, because she didn't necessarily say they were good benefits, that they're just good.
Right. That's the distinction, like, because it could go on a rabbit trail from there.
Yeah. So excellent. I'm so glad to hear you're happy with your benefits. I'm going to paste that part of it.
Okay.
I'm going to kind of see if I can overcome the we're good, because we're good. Now we could mind read and we could say, well, when somebody says we're good, that's their way of saying like, go kick rocks. I don't want to talk about it anymore. We could assume that. Does that help Pam build her business? No. So I don't want her to be like completely oblivious, but I do think sometimes having selective amnesia in this particular case, we can check to see. So we got to tread lightly, but we do still want to check to see, would you be interested or would you be willing to look at some additional benefits that you may not be aware of yet? Now, if she gives Pam a hard no, I probably would let it go there. I wouldn't keep pushing, because then I think you're going to annoy, and that's not to Pam's like advantage or any of our advantage. But if she's like, maybe, because sometimes people, especially, I think a lot of times, Pam, is this true that a lot of times you're dealing with HR, like that's where you start, is at the HR level?
You know what? Yes, because business owners are easier, but when you're dealing with HR, anything, they don't want to have to deal with it because it's going to create more work and time. Yes.
That's true. So I know that I used to have a client that their HR person and I interacted quite frequently. And I remember every time I would go in and do a training, like not every time, I guess I would say probably most 75% of the time when I would go in and do a training, we would always do a group lunch, and she would participate in the group lunch. And she would come. So I over the years, I had really gotten to know her. And I remember she was talking about how often they get pitched. Like HR people feel like, if I could, at least her impression was, if I just got on the phone with everybody who asked for 5 minutes, I would not get any work done, right? So we want to be really careful and sensitive to that. and we still have to pitch them because that's how Pam gets her foot in the door. So pace, see if you can overcome.
Okay. Thank you, Nikki.
You're welcome. Who else? Question, comment, takeaway, anything you'd like to share with the group or anything you'd like to ask me? Go ahead, Kim. Oh, hold on. I can't hear you now. There you are.
So on page 26 in the mind reading exercise, step 2,
Yeah.
I want to know if this would open up kind of a can of worms,
Okay.
because to me, it feels like my style would be in that mind reading. I would, in asking the question, like soften it with, I'm curious. And so I'm wondering, as an example, like it'll never work or it won't work if they're using that kind of definitive statement. And so my thought would be, my natural inclination would be, I'm curious, what prompted? I wanted to use the word prompt. And I was just wondering, from an NLP background, is that a good word? Is there, so instead of like what comes to mind, or, what did this make you think of? I thought maybe prompt will bypass something and get right to it.
Yeah, I like the what prompted. The other way that you could check in with somebody what says it will never work, which part specifically, or what specifically leads you to believe that it would never work? Or what prompted you to decide it would never work? Now, that could bring a lot of story. Like the way that you phrase that question could be like, well, I signed up for a blah, 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 and then this happened, and then this other thing happened in my life, and now you got a lot of story. So you want to think about that too.
So would it be too wordy to go, I'm curious, what prompted that to come to mind for you?
What prompted that to come to mind for you is fine.
Okay. And then another way to say it would be, which part specifically are you thinking won't work?
Yeah.
Like, is that thinking?
What specifically about it makes you think it would not work?
About it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. All the things you said work too, Kim. I'm just giving you some other phrasing.
Well, I like to have these scripts. I mean, this is like the Nikki Bible salesman, but like I have all the scripts. And so I just like to catalog them, and then I'll pick and choose, and then just keep repeating and trying to get the rhythm out so it just comes naturally.
Good.
So
Thank you. All right. Anybody have another question, comment? We have a few more minutes. I'm happy to stay, but I also am not going to force the issue. If you're good, we'll leave it here. So going once. Any last question, comment, takeaway?
Nikki?
Yeah.
Nikki? Hi there. I don't have a question. I just want to say that the training today, I mean, all of your trainings are wonderful, but this one was exceptional because sometimes you have a meeting and you think that you're asking all the questions, and then you get back and it's like, oh my gosh, they talk about digging deeper, but yet there's things that they don't talk about, or they generalize, and these just give me the words to use to go deeper. There's so many places that I'm just missing out on.
Well, awesome. Thank you. I'm glad that was some awareness for you today. And these language skills will continue to develop, and you'll get more comfortable. Like Kim says, it's just practicing some of these phrases and getting used to catching these generalizations, these deletions, these distortions, and how to dig in a little bit and find out a little bit more about thinking patterns, and overcoming some of these problem areas. And the way that we speak in our society is very general and gets a lot of us into trouble because
Yeah.
we speak in general. So I love that you're happy with it. Thank you for the feedback. I appreciate it so much.
Oh my God. I'm going to just keep going over this material and over it because it's so valuable.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That makes me feel like validated in the work that goes into putting these workbooks together and having this training. So thank you. I appreciate it. All right. Anybody who hasn't spoken up yet, I want to give you an opportunity. Question, comment. Going once. Berla.
Well, I spoke a lot today, so
Not
but,
recently.
not recently. I just think today's been great. I'm just loving this.
Thank you.
I think excellent communication is one of the best things one of the best skills we can have. I am finding that I don't have the broadness of the skill in my personal life now that I do have in my professional life, and I'm kind of surprised about that. But I think it's, whatever was modeled at home is important. And I didn't have good modeling at home. And then I got the skills in business. Right. But it can translate. So I'm playing with that now. So it's really good.
Yeah, good. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for speaking up and for your kind words too. And again, we are all a work in progress. I am as well. I find that in my client interactions, I feel like the words come easily. And sometimes in my private life, you revert back to a younger version of yourself, or you revert back to a situation or kind of complex relationship you have with a certain person. And so you're not as thoughtful, you're not as eloquent, you don't ask the right questions. It's part of growing. Like, I feel like if I could walk into every situation and be like, I know exactly what to say and how to say it and what question to ask, like, I kind of would be bored, right? Like, we have to continue to evolve. So make sure you're giving yourself some grace for that too, is that evolution is part of life. I was having a conversation with Lisa Fisher yesterday when I was driving her back to the airport. We were talking about this training this morning, and she was asking me some questions about creating content. And as much as I would love to say, like, this workbook is done and I can teach this class tomorrow on a dime, and, but I already know there's so many revisions that I'll be making for the next time that I teach this. Some of you, let me see, maybe only Kim got this version of this content from me back in 2018. And I will tell you that the version today is much more in depth, right? Because we continue to evolve. So I don't know, Kim, if you ever remember this content in 2018 that I taught in a little conference room in Renton, Washington.
Oh, I love those. Those were great. And truthfully, I think all of these versions, these are just the best ever. So I keep them all. I refer to them. I have like 3 of them on my workstation that I refer to depending on what the topic is. So I did have another question. I
know you do. Yeah. I know you do. I want to give you an opportunity to ask it. I will not get off the call without asking. So I just want to check and see specifically Sonia, Blessy, Louise, Sarah. I know Sarah said she didn't leave a comment for me, but Sarah, Susan, Sky's spoken up a little bit. But if there's anything that you want to ask or say, please, I'm going to give you a few seconds to unmute yourself because I feel like I keep talking.
Well, I definitely want to say that I could really up my questions game. I'm basically making statements all day long. And there's a couple of areas where I'm like, oh my gosh, no wonder I'm feeling so much resistance from clients. And it's because I'm telling them, here's your solution, here's your solution, here's your solution, which sometimes works. But in these places where I'm getting a lot of resistance, these things are going on. They're comparing, they're deleting, they're, generalizing. And so just getting curious, like that's going to be what I implement right away is 2 things. I'm going to implement using the word specifically because I speak totally in general. So I'm going to say specifically, and then I'm going to start getting curious and ask some questions before our next session.
Good, good. Deep conversation comes out of questions. Like, I will say also, I said this earlier and I didn't comment that much on it, but consumer protection for your mind too, that sometimes when you're in the position and your money's on the line or your relationship, you know, it's like, do we move forward? Do we not? Like whatever the relationship exists of, business, personal, whatever, that we want to have some consumer protection for our mind, that when you want to get out of conversation, you don't ask first specifically, you don't ask questions, you can make statements that helps alleviate people wanting to continue the conversation with you, right? Like it's a way to exit, it's an exit plan. So keeping that stuff in mind too, that this, like anything, I always love to say, is on a spectrum, right? So we can shift anywhere in between. And every time you bring one of these tools into a conversation, it just gives you more flexibility to move throughout the spectrum versus like, I used to only have access to this much, but now I've got this much. It's the same, like digital versus analog thinking. So just continuing to recognize that you can also change your behavior to use it to your advantage, to exit conversation, to shut things down when it doesn't feel right or comfortable to you as well. So I just wanted to comment on that. All right. Okay. So Kim, question for me.
Yes. On the like whether or not this is a good fit for somebody, I was looking for some better words than what I had come up with. So you had mentioned in the chat, like, this may not be for you yet, it may be a good fit for someone else. So is it like, please share, or do share, or just share this? Like,
I would say, I guess the way I might frame this is I would say, even if this isn't a great fit for you, would you be willing to share this with somebody you know that would find value in it? Like that would probably be the way I would phrase it.
okay, can you say that one more time?
Can I? Let's see. Even if this is not the right fit for you, would you be willing to share it with someone you know? Now, I'm asking them to be a mind reader, frankly, in this statement, someone you know. And I think it's okay here. As a matter of fact, I know it's okay here because we all act like we're mind readers. So when you validate somebody, like somebody you know that would benefit from this, they're like, oh, I do know somebody that would benefit, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
This is not a right fit for you. Would you be willing to share with someone you know? Okay. And just leave it at that? Do you say thank you, or thank you in advance, or?
I like to say thank you in advance for your consideration. I wouldn't say thank you in advance for doing it, because then that implies that they did it, and that can be a little bit stressful on the relationship, you know? So I would say thank you in advance for your consideration. The fact that they read the email to me is consideration.
And would this be something, so I'm going to put out an offer on my Facebook page, on my personal page, and then on my business one for kind of a unique offer. Would you recommend that in the post as well, or would you do it different for social media?
I might put it at the bottom as a PS. Right? Because, or I would say, maybe I would say it differently. On social media, I might say, you're welcome to tag and or share this with anyone you know who would benefit from it. Like, I'm saying it like it's an invitation to do it. It's also, it's a little bit of an embedded command that way. I like embedded commands. We're going to talk about them next week.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. All right, then we are going to wrap up today. Thank you so much for your participation, for all of your kind words. I am beyond thrilled with the feedback so far from this training. It's one of those NLP things that feels deep and it feels like a lot. So I'm super am super excited about the reception from all of you about this content and already seeing ways that you can start to implement this into your business. Learning to be a better communicator will just continue to serve you on into your life, you know, tomorrow, today, next week, 5 years from now, 20 years from now. So all of these skills will be things that you can continue to just take with you. You own it. It's yours now. So good luck. Thank you everybody for being here. The recording will be available later today. You will get an email with the passcode for next week, but it is the same passcode. Please accept my apology in not getting that out to you this morning. Have a great rest of your day. I will talk to you all soon. Take care. Bye.